So in our first reading is that wonderful event of Jacob and the dream that he had of the stairway to heaven. And I call it Stairway to Heaven. I'm showing my age. That was one of the most favorite songs in my high school, Stairway to Heaven. Freebird and Stairway to Heaven. But what can we learn about this reading regarding the patriarch Jacob? Well, again, who is Jacob? Jacob was one of the sons of Rebekah and Isaac was the promised son of Abraham. And Jacob and Esau were twins. And first of all, we must remember that Isaac prayed for Rebekah. Rebekah was barren and Isaac prayed. So Jacob and Esau were answers to prayer. And as she was giving birth, the Lord gave the prophecy that the older shall serve the younger. And Esau was the firstborn, and he came out and he was hairy, red hair, and of course his descendants are called the Edomites because of that. But Jacob, his younger brother, had grabbed him by the heel, the supplanter. And so remember the story that Isaac loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Some interesting and very common family dynamics we see in the patriarchs and their families in the book of Genesis. But the word, Rebekah heard the word that Isaac wanted Esau to make him some venison, some meat, because Esau was a hunter. Jacob was the one who basically stayed around the house. He wasn't an outdoorsman. But Rebekah heard that Isaac requested this and he was going to bless him. And so Rebekah had the idea, the plan of preparing the food, but then Jacob would wear the skins, the animal skins, so that he could pretend to be Esau and receive the blessing. Now, before this occurred, you remember the story too of when Jacob had been preparing lentils and bread, and Esau came in from the field and he traded his birthright for food. So Jacob had already received the birthright, deceived him into giving the birthright, which is a lesson in and of itself about controlling yourself regarding food. Don't trade in your birthright for a plate of food like Esau did. But now Jacob stole his blessing. And so, you know the story, he went in and Isaac wasn't sure. It sounded like Jacob, but then he felt his arms and he had hairy arms, so he sounded like Jacob, but he felt like Esau. And then he smelled him and he smelled the animal skin, and well, you smell like the field that God has blessed, but you sound like Jacob. But anyway, Isaac gave Jacob Esau's blessing. And so Rebekah encouraged him to flee, to go back to their home country, which was in Aramea, to Pandam Aram, and to find a wife. So we see Jacob here fleeing, going from Beersheba to Pandam Aram, which is Mesopotamia or Aramea, and so he's on the way. And our version says that he stopped at a shrine. Now I find that interesting that they use that word. That's not the word that's used, but they're making an interpretation which is consistent with the Jewish teaching of this. When you read the actual text, it says that he stopped at the place. The place. And I find it interesting that in the Jewish interpretation of this, he stopped at the place, meaning the place where God had showed his grandfather Abraham where to offer Isaac. That was called the place. It wasn't that he just stopped at some random place, but he stopped at the place. So the word there is the Hebrew word for place with an article, the place. And so what our Jewish brethren, the way they interpret this is that he stopped at Mount Moriah. Now we often think, well, he called the place Bethel, and there was a town north of Jerusalem called Bethel, which means house of God. And in our text it says it was formerly called Luz, L-U-Z. But I find it interesting that the Jewish understanding is that Jacob actually stopped at the place, and they would have known this place, at the place where Abraham offered his father Isaac, Mount Moriah. And what is also significant about that place is that's the place, Mount Moriah, where the temple would later be built. So that's why the New American Bible translates it the shrine. It's trying to tell us that he didn't stop at some random place off the side of the road, but he actually stopped at a place that was very significant, a place of worship for his family. So what does our text tell us? Well, he laid upon a stone, which again the Jewish teaching is that he also laid about him 12 stones, representing the 12 sons that he would have. It was a prophetic thing. But as he went to sleep, he had a dream, and he saw this stairway to heaven. And of course, the stairway is more like, you've seen the old pictures or drawings of the ancient ziggurats. That they're stairs, that's like a pyramid, but they're stairs that go up higher and higher. That was the dream that he had. Well, what's the significance of the dream? Well, the first thing I think that we ought to recognize is that there's a variety of different interpretations of the significance of the dream of angels ascending and descending. Many different interpretations. Jesus refers to this dream when he calls Nathanael. And he said, you know, I saw you before you came, you were under the fig tree. And then he said, well, you are the rabbi of Israel. And he said, does that surprise you? You will see angels descending and ascending upon the Son of Man. So Jesus makes reference to this dream. But what does the dream mean? Well, I think the first step is to recognize that we need to focus on what the Lord said here in the passage, instead of trying to come up with these wild ideas of the importance of the dream. I think if we focus on and try to understand what the Lord said to Jacob, that'll help us understand the dream. He did see the Lord standing over him or guarding over him, and he said something to Jacob. So what did the Lord say? This will help us understand what's going on here. The Lord said, I am the Lord, the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. He says, the land on which you are lying I will give to you and your descendants. So the Lord is making the covenant with Jacob. He had made the covenant with Abraham, he made the covenant with Isaac, his father, and now he's making the covenant with him. What does he say? I'll give you the land. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth. All the nations of the earth shall find blessing in your descendants. Again, the same covenant promises that he gave his grandfather Abraham, that he gave Isaac his father, now he's giving them to Jacob. This had not occurred before this time. So the Lord is making the covenant with him. He says that I am with you. That's where I think that's the key to understanding his dream. He's seeing angels ascending and descending on the stairway to heaven. He sees the Lord guarding over him. The Lord says, I am with you. His angels are going with Jacob. His angels are ascending. What do we get from that? They are ascending, carrying the prayers of Jacob, carrying the needs of Jacob. Think about what Jacob was doing. He was fleeing from his brother. You think his heart was full of anxiety that perhaps his brother would overtake him and kill him? He was fleeing and leaving his family. He was going to Laban. And we know what Laban did to him. But he's going back. He's going back to their original home country. I'm sure his heart was full of anxiety. Anxiety from what he was leaving, an angry brother, and anxiety of who he was to find, Laban, and to try to find a wife, and to go back to a people he really did not know. So the angels ascending and descending, the Lord hearing his prayers, the Lord receiving the report from the angels of his needs, and then the Lord providing for his needs by sending the angels to minister to Jacob, just as the angels went and ministered to Jesus in the wilderness. I think that's the point of the dream. The Lord was encouraging and reminding Jacob, I am your covenant God. I'm making a covenant with you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to guard you. What else does the Lord say? I will protect you wherever you go. The Lord's saying, I will be your God. I am your protector, Jacob. Wherever you may go. You ever been in a situation like that? Where it seemed like there was anxiety looking back, there's anxiety looking forward, and here's the Lord telling Jacob, I am with you. There's no greater peace than knowing that God is with you, that God will protect you, as he's telling Jacob. I will bring you back to this land. Maybe Jacob had an anxiety that he would never return to the land of promise. He's leaving the land that not only his family dwelt, but he's leaving the land now that the Lord has covenanted to him. So I'm leaving the land of promise. Will I ever return to this land of promise? The Lord is promising him. He's making a covenant with him. I will bring you back to this land, and I will do everything that I have promised. That's an important lesson for us to learn from this event in the life of the patriarch Jacob. And so what did Jacob do? This is an awesome place. So he takes the stone or the pillar, he pours oil on it. Why did he do that? He was consecrating that place. This is a holy place. And then he called the place Bethel, which literally means the house of God. The house of God. And so that's why we read, for example, in Isaiah 2. In Isaiah 2, it says, come, let us go up to the house of the Lord, when all the nations will go up to the heavenly Jerusalem to worship the Lord, to learn from him, to learn from his law. It says, let us go up to Zion, to the house of the God of Jacob. What is that referring to? It's referring to Bethel. It's referring to the house of God that Jacob acknowledged, that Jacob consecrated in the place. And then the place, years later, the temple would be built. As a matter of fact, right now, our Jewish brethren are in that 3-week period where they're mourning the destruction of the temples. It's a very significant place. It's the place where God said, I will make my name to dwell. Something we shouldn't overlook as Christians. But I think the big takeaway from our reading this morning is we are God's covenant people. God also extends those promises to us. I am with you. I will protect you. I will fulfill every promise that I have made to you. And when we're especially in times of anxiety, when not knowing where to turn or where to go, may the words of our Lord as he spoke to our patriarch Jacob, be words of encouragement to you and I. I will protect you, I am with you.